Uh, Thank you that I can be here and share this research with you. I'm a postdoc at ETH Zurich and IMPA, which is affiliated with ETH Zurich. And I work in a group that is called Circular Engineering for Architecture. And we look at different applications related to blockchain and circularity in construction. But the question I always get is like, what can blockchain really do for circularity in construction? And why do we even research this? And to answer some of these questions, I summarized this in this paper I submitted to this conference, and I'm going to show you the high-level overview, how we think about blockchain for circularity at our chair. So the main motivation, as we heard before, is that we have more and more data available that can help us with different aspects of circularity in construction. For example, we can use the data to have better repair and maintenance to prolong the lifetime of a building, so reduce the need for recycling or tearing the building down. Or if we then have the end of the life cycle, we can use the data to identify materials or components that can be reused or recycled. So this sounds all great, but actually the reality is that even though we might be able to think about how to keep circularity of built assets and products from a supply chain perspective, that doesn't mean that the data that is needed to base these decisions on follows the same life cycle. So to give you an example why this might be really important is if you think about a use case where in the future you want to go build a new house and you want to reuse materials from other buildings that at the same time are torn down in other places of the city, you need information about this. So you can ask these questions like, where do I get the 30 tons of steel reused, right? And if you think about it, this simple use case needs trusted data that you can access at this certain point in time, so you can base these important business decisions on it. And to have accessible data available, people need to provide that data. They need to maintain and update it over the very long lifetimes of these buildings. In Switzerland, we have buildings that are 200 years old. I think no one stays around that long, at least as far as I know. So we need some sort of mechanisms to ensure that this data is still available at the end. So we came up with this framework, and the idea is that to keep circular flows, material flows in line with the circular information flow, we need to have data available and trusted and provided, maintained and updated. And we provide some use cases of blockchain to achieve either of those. So let's start with the left. I think it's also the one that is more talked about. So we heard before that blockchain can be used to what we call timestamp data. So you basically take the fingerprint of a file, so you hash it, you put it on the blockchain, and then later on you can recalculate the hash and compare it to the one stored on the blockchain and say, hey, this file really existed at the point in time, it's the same file. So this already is in use. I know that Akka software, I'm not paid by them, uses something like that for their BIM files. And at the other option you have is that you use on-chain storage, so you can put data in smart contracts by creating data structures and key value mappings in contracts. So the advantage here is it is on the blockchain, everyone can see it, but of course it costs more, it's more expensive. So these two options regarding how to use blockchain to make data available. But one use case that is less talked about is that it needs to be accessible. So after 50 years or 60 years, do you really trust that the servers are still there, that the email and password credentials you use can be still used to access the data? And I think blockchain is a very robust technology. It promises to stay along for a long time, ideally. And you could use then these access mechanisms based on addresses to access data. So for example, you can then collect this to smart contracts and use tokens to give access to data. And this creates also interesting new dynamics, how to access and distribute access rights. So I could just send you a token and you have access to this data. And we have a Web3 prototype. If you're interested to know more where we tested some of these things, you can look it up here. But even so, this you find other sources talking about this, but what is less talked about is the right side. How can blockchain be used to maintain and update and provide data in the first place? So we heard about incentives in the beginning. I think incentives is a really strong use case of blockchain, where you can use tokenization either for monetary or for other purposes to provide incentives for more circularity. So this could be as simple as you pay people with microtransactions to update the datasets that you need. Or you can, we heard about carbon incentives before, you incentivizes more sustainable and circular behavior with like carbon credits. Or we have also a paper on performance-based contracts where you incentivize energy performance that is met in the use phase with monetary rewards. The other one I keep short because I already showed it at the beginning. I think marketplaces, peer-to-peer marketplaces of data can be really valuable. So you directly exchange this data. You can even sell it to each other using also blockchain technology. And the last one is also less talked about, is the possibility about machine agents, that blockchain addresses cannot be only owned by humans. You can also give them to a machine, because the blockchain doesn't really care who owns the address. So you can make machines own its own money. They can also hold these access mechanisms with smart contracts, and you could basically give all the data to the building. So we have No One's One, which is a prototype of a self-owning house. So it earns its own money. No one can access the money, and you can facilitate then governance mechanisms through blockchain to use the money for maintenance and other use cases. I think this is a pretty exciting, very disruptive long-term use case of blockchain, and I would like to see more research in these directions. So all of these are research efforts we are doing. The No One's One project is together with Hongyang Wang, a PhD researcher, and the marketplace research is together with Future Cities Laboratories in Singapore, and the PhD researcher doing this is David Bucher. So also credits to them. So in summary, why do we think it's worth researching blockchain for a circular built environment? We heard a lot about trust and accessible data, but I think a very important part is also the novel digital circle business models through these crypto economic incentives. That is also something that is less talked about, and I wanted to highlight in this presentation and this conference paper. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah. Thank you.